What began as a low-key legal filing has now erupted into a very public unraveling. Kristy Scott has accused Desmond of being unfaithful, allegedly with multiple partners, and even claims he exposed her to sexually transmitted infections. According to people following the situation closely, this isn't an isolated incident, but part of a much longer pattern. What was once a private separation has spiraled into a spectacle filled with cheating allegations, viral clips, and non-stop online scrutiny of Desmond's recent behavior. The first major reveal came when reports surfaced that Kristy had formally filed for divorce in Harris County, Texas. There was nothing ambiguous about the paperwork. She directly pointed to infidelity as the reason, leaving no room for working it out narratives or quiet reconciliation rumors. The message was clear: this marriage was over. Court documents later showed the filing actually happened back in December 2025, which shocked many people considering the couple had spent more than 10 years together. This wasn't an impulsive decision or a short-lived relationship ending, it was the closing of a long, shared life. What raised even more eyebrows was the timing. Just days after the filing, Desmond was already being seen publicly with another woman. That suspicion turned into widespread outrage when video footage began circulating online. The clip showed Desmond inside Houston's Bar Sante, sitting with a woman on his lap. The two were openly affectionate, kissing for a prolonged time while mingling inside the venue. Nothing about the interaction looked accidental or brief, and once the video hit social media, many viewers saw it not as bad timing, but as proof. Not long after the footage went viral, Desmond broke his silence. He posted a statement to his Instagram story addressing the divorce and the public fallout. In it, he expressed regret toward Kristy, their family, and anyone impacted by the attention surrounding the situation. He also emphasized that, regardless of what was happening between them, Kristy would always matter to him as the mother of his children, and that their well-being remained his priority. What was once a private marital breakdown has now become a case study in how quickly personal decisions can explode under public eyes, and how silence, timing, and visibility can shape the narrative just as much as the truth itself. One sentence from Desmond's statement ended up carrying far more weight than the rest. "I made choices I'm not proud of." He never outright confessed to cheating, but that single line landed heavily with the public. To many, it sounded less like a denial and more like a carefully worded acknowledgement, an admission without specifics. Critics felt the phrasing was intentionally vague, crafted to express regret while avoiding direct responsibility. In the same message, Desmond added that he had wanted to separate from Kristy for quite some time. During that prolonged emotional limbo, he said, he made decisions that ultimately helped dismantle their marriage. He framed the split as something they had tried to formalize earlier, suggesting a long, complicated process rather than a sudden collapse. The way he described it painted the separation as emotionally exhausting and drawn out. Reactions to that explanation were split. Some supporters felt he was trying, in his own imperfect way, to own his part while providing context. Others weren't convinced. To them, the statement felt like damage control, an attempt to soften the narrative without directly confronting the accusations laid out in the divorce filing. As screenshots of the statement spread, online speculation only intensified. Many people began interpreting his words as a subtle admission that he had been unfaithful while still married. Then attention turned to the timeline. Kristy had filed first, and she explicitly cited infidelity as the reason for the divorce. That alone raised questions. But soon, another rumor entered the conversation and shifted the tone entirely. Online chatter began suggesting that Desmond may have cheated with a man. With that rumor circulating, the viral footage of him kissing a woman at a Houston bar suddenly looked different to some viewers. A new theory took hold, that the public display might have been intentional. Some people speculated the moment was staged, meant to drown out or redirect attention away from the same-sex cheating rumors. One widely shared comment captured that suspicion bluntly: staged. He saw everyone saying he cheated with a man, lol. There's no evidence to back up that claim, but the theory spread quickly. The timing of the footage, paired with the sudden public affection, made many people question whether the moment was organic or strategic. While all of this unfolded online, Kristy stayed mostly quiet. What did speak loudly were the court documents. Kristy, who is also known publicly as Kristy Sarah, formally requested that her last name be changed back to her maiden name, Small. For many, that detail felt symbolic, a clear step toward reclaiming her identity and closing that chapter of her life. The filing also addressed their children, sons Vance and Weston. Kristy stated that she and Desmond intended to work out a written agreement covering custody, visitation, and child support. If they couldn't come to terms privately, she asked the court to step in. The language of the filing described the marriage as effectively over, noting that the two were in the process of no longer living together as husband and wife. There was no ambiguity in that wording. It carried a sense of finality. Public reaction remained divided, but some responses echoed a common feeling. One comment summed it up simply: "I'm not surprised she's divorcing him for unfaithfulness." As more details and rumors surfaced, many people stopped framing the situation as emotional betrayal alone. A growing number began to believe it ran much deeper. Online claims suggested Desmond may have been involved with multiple people at once. Some even speculated that Kristy's decision to leave was tied to concerns about her physical health. None of this has been confirmed, but to many observers, it explained why the divorce filing was so firm, why reconciliation wasn't even entertained as a possibility. For a lot of people, even the allegation of sexually transmitted diseases is a line that can't be uncrossed. That's not something most couples attempt to work through with counseling or apologies. Once trust is violated at that level, especially in a long-term marriage built on assumptions of safety and exclusivity, it fundamentally changes the relationship. It's no longer just about emotional betrayal. It becomes physical, psychological, and deeply personal. The idea alone introduces fear, shame, and a sense of danger into what was supposed to be a secure space. And once that sense of safety is gone, explanations rarely repair it. Then there's how quickly Desmond appeared to move on. That aspect has fueled just as much discussion as the allegations themselves. Only days after the divorce filing became public, he was already seen out, openly affectionate with another woman, seemingly unbothered by the collapse of a long marriage. To many watching, it didn't resemble someone processing grief, loss, or the end of a family unit. It looked like someone already comfortable in a new chapter, someone who may have emotionally checked out long before the paperwork was ever signed. When people line up the timeline with the visuals, it becomes hard for them not to draw conclusions. Fair or not, speed becomes circumstantial evidence in the court of public opinion. Most people don't appear to move on that seamlessly unless much of the detachment happened privately, earlier, and out of sight. There's also a widely held belief that Kristy may have known far more than the public ever will. Some think that explains her restraint, why she didn't engage in public arguments, drag out the process, or leave the door open for reconciliation. To them, her response doesn't read as shock. It reads as exhaustion. As someone who had already reached her limit long before the story became public. When betrayal is processed quietly, behind closed doors, the ending can look unusually calm. That doesn't mean it wasn't painful. Often, it means the worst of the pain happened earlier, away from cameras, comment sections, and speculation, long before anyone else realized the marriage was already over. Reading through the comment sections, you can almost trace the emotional evolution in real time. What started as confusion slowly turned into curiosity, and eventually settled into something that feels a lot like a collective verdict. One comment, in particular, kept resurfacing. It read, "I never watched them because they're both corny and really annoying. But what he did was so messed up. They knew each other for so long and had 2 kids, and this is how it ends?" No matter how annoying her content is, there's no excuse for cheating. That response struck a chord precisely because it came from outside the usual camps. It wasn't a fan defending a favorite creator, and it wasn't a critic looking for an excuse to pile on. It was someone completely detached from their content who still recognized that some boundaries, once crossed, don't need context or bias to be understood. That's ultimately why this situation has resonated so widely. It has very little to do with whether people liked their videos, connected with their personalities, or found their online presence authentic. Strip all of that away and what's left is something far more universal: a long marriage, a shared life built over years, and 2 children now growing up in the shadow of a very public rupture. Once infidelity enters that equation, it tends to eclipse everything else. Debates about branding, content, or likability fade quickly when trust is perceived to have been broken over time. Social media only intensifies that reaction. It accelerates judgment and hardens opinions. Every appearance becomes a statement. Every smile is analyzed. Desmond being seen with another woman so soon after the filing didn't remain a personal moment, it transformed into a symbol. To some, it represented disrespect. To others, confirmation of what they already believed. To still others, a lack of remorse. Whether those interpretations are fair almost stops mattering once they gain traction. Perception locks in, and undoing it becomes nearly impossible. At the same time, there's an important distinction that often gets lost online: what's confirmed versus what's assumed. Kristy herself hasn't publicly spoken about specific health-related claims or detailed allegations beyond what appeared in the divorce filing. That line matters, even if the internet frequently ignores it. Speculation tends to rush in wherever clarity is absent, especially when behavior seems to align with people's expectations of guilt. Another layer that complicates everything is the emotional standard placed on the person who was wronged. People dissect Kristy's responses, or lack of them, with relentless scrutiny. Is she too quiet? Too firm? Too detached? But decisiveness doesn't mean numbness. Silence doesn't equal indifference. Sometimes it means someone has already cried in private, already asked the painful questions, already realized that staying would cost them their dignity. Leaving cleanly isn't always cold, it can be an act of survival. And then there are the children, which many commenters keep returning to. Two kids don't just symbolize a shared past, they anchor a shared future. Holidays, milestones, daily routines, all of it now looks different. That's what adds gravity for many observers. It's one thing to betray a partner. It's another to fracture a family. While divorce doesn't doom children to unhappiness, the choices that lead there inevitably carry more weight. Much of the anger online seems rooted in the feeling that everything was treated as disposable. Years of marriage. A partnership that existed both privately and publicly. A family dynamic many assumed was solid. When that appears to be followed almost immediately by public romance, it creates emotional whiplash. People expect a visible pause, some reflection, restraint, or acknowledgement. When they don't see it, they interpret that absence as indifference. What's striking is how quickly narratives become fixed. Once cheating is accepted as the cause, every subsequent action is filtered through that lens. Smiling too soon looks cruel. Dating too soon looks incriminating. Even neutral behavior gets recast as evidence. That's the cost of a public relationship ending in public. You don't just lose your partner, you lose control of the story. Still, beneath all the speculation, everything circles back to trust. Trust isn't just about physical fidelity. It's about honesty, care, and protecting the person you claim to love from harm. When that trust is broken in a way that feels careless or dismissive, people draw firm moral lines. That's why the tone online has shifted from curiosity to certainty. For many, cheating isn't complicated. It's a definitive ending. At this point, the situation has moved beyond two online personalities. It's become a mirror for values people hold deeply: loyalty, accountability, and the consequences of betrayal. That's why even those who never followed their content feel compelled to weigh in. They aren't defending a creator or attacking a brand. They're responding to the idea that some actions permanently alter how others see you. And in this case, regardless of what is eventually confirmed, the mix of timing, behavior, and silence has already shaped a narrative that won't fade easily. Kristy's silence, in particular, has taken on a life of its own. Some interpret it as restraint. Others see it as the calm before more revelations. Silence, in situations like this, never exists on its own. It becomes a blank surface onto which the public projects assumptions, suspicions, and curiosity. Every unanswered moment feels loaded. Every pause is treated like a clue. Ironically, by saying very little, she has invited even more attention, people analyzing what isn't said just as intensely as they would a detailed explanation. Days after filing for divorce, Kristy posted a brief message on Instagram, same address. Just 2 words, yet they sparked widespread discussion. In a digital culture dominated by long captions and emotional confessions, the simplicity felt intentional. Some saw it as a subtle correction to rumors about her living situation. Others read it symbolically, as a quiet declaration of stability, or a reminder that not everything had collapsed overnight. The lack of explanation only amplified the speculation. Whether the post was meant to communicate something specific or nothing at all, its ambiguity ensured one thing: people would keep talking. For now, everything remains suspended in an uneasy limbo. Nothing feels fully resolved, and with each passing day, the uncertainty seems to stretch rather than settle. Desmond has acknowledged that he made mistakes, but he has stopped short of addressing the full weight of the allegations circulating online. His statements are brief, deliberate, and noticeably restrained, enough to signal regret, but not enough to confront the accusations head-on. To some observers, this feels intentional, as if every sentence has been filtered through lawyers and advisors. To others, it reads as avoidance, a strategy that sidesteps accountability and leaves more questions unanswered than resolved. Kristy, on the other hand, has largely stepped back from public commentary altogether. Instead of statements or explanations, she has let the divorce filings and minimal social media activity do the talking. That choice suggests a clear preference for formal channels over public debate. Legal documents carry weight in a way online posts never can. They are structured, binding, and rooted in consequence. By relying on the court rather than commentary, Kristy appears to be drawing a firm line between what belongs in a legal setting and what does not belong in the chaos of online speculation. What does seem evident is that this marriage did not end abruptly or peacefully. The filing reads less like a reaction to a single incident and more like the conclusion of long-standing issues that had been building quietly over time. Relationships rarely collapse overnight. More often, they erode slowly, with fractures forming long before anyone on the outside can see them. Now, the public is working backward, re-examining old interviews, past posts, and reported moments, trying to pinpoint when the damage truly began. Each fragment adds to the sense that this partnership had been unraveling behind closed doors well before it became visible. The emergence of public footage added another dimension entirely. Visual evidence carries a unique force because it feels immediate and real, even when it captures only seconds of a much longer story. People scrutinize expressions, body language, and context, searching for confirmation of the narratives they already suspect. But footage is never the whole truth. It freezes a single moment in time, stripped of the history that surrounds it, and leaves interpretation wide open. Desmond's carefully phrased response fits neatly into this larger pattern of controlled communication. By admitting fault without specifying details, he appears to be walking a narrow line, showing remorse while limiting exposure, both legally and reputationally. From a strategic perspective, that makes sense. From a public one, it has backfired. The absence of clarity has only fueled speculation, allowing rumors to grow unchecked as people fill in the blanks themselves. When information is withheld, imagination takes over. Whether more details will emerge remains uncertain, but the possibility hangs in the air. Public separations often unfold in phases, with new information surfacing as legal proceedings move forward or as one party eventually decides to speak more openly. Each development has the power to reshape public opinion, forcing people to reconsider assumptions they once held with confidence. Until then, the narrative remains fluid, shaped by partial disclosures, personal interpretation, and the relentless pace of online conversation. The question of infidelity continues to dominate discussion, largely because it carries such emotional weight. Allegations of cheating often become the moral center of stories like this, overshadowing every other aspect of a relationship. And yet, real relationships are rarely that simple. They are layered, complicated, and influenced by dynamics outsiders may never fully grasp. Still, once infidelity enters the public narrative, it tends to flatten everything else, reducing years of shared history to a single defining accusation. As time passes, silence itself begins to speak. Each decision not to respond is interpreted as meaningful, reinforcing the belief that there is more beneath the surface. Supporters of Kristy view her restraint as strength, a refusal to perform pain for public approval, choosing dignity and legal resolution instead. Supporters of Desmond argue that acknowledging mistakes without engaging in public battles reflects maturity and seriousness rather than avoidance. Both interpretations coexist, shaped largely by perspective rather than proof. Social media plays a powerful role in all of this. Platforms designed for expression have become echo chambers where incomplete information spreads rapidly and opinions harden quickly. A single, ambiguous post, like Kristy's same address, can ignite hours of analysis and thousands of comments. In this environment, even neutrality is treated as messaging, and every action is examined for subtext. Time, however, has a way of reshaping both facts and perception. What feels urgent and unresolved now may eventually settle into something clearer as emotions cool and legal processes unfold. Courts move slowly, while the internet demands instant answers.